Hey, this is Kirk.
And this is Bird. It's the Kirk and Bird Show, and we are at state quarterfinals. We covered all over this wonderful state. We've got Justin Ditmore, who's going to cover that whole Roanoke, Lynchburg, that whole part of the state. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Enjoy it as always, guys. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, and then, of course, we got Matt Hatfield, who's 757, but knows the entire state, including all of 804, and he'll overlap all of us. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Hey, guys. It's a pleasure to be back on. A fun time of year. State tournament doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, and it must be nice out there. Where are you, in Hawaii right now? You just, I don't know.
Yeah, we went to the Bahamas for a brief
okay.
time. We'll be back in
He's
time.
got his vacation home. His vacation
You'll
home.
be back by Tuesday, I'm sure.
Virginia Beach, man. That's Virginia Beach. Buckrow.
And of course, Chris Jollay of Nova Hoops. He's got everything in this northern region covered, and he even goes down into that 540 area with Kettle Run, the Fauquier schools, all that staff. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I enjoy talking with you guys all the time. It's going to be good for me to learn because, I don't venture out of Northern Virginia. So I can't wait to hear what Justin and Matt have to say.
This is an awesome panel. Me too. I can't wait to hear what you all have to say. So we're going to cover classes 1 through 6. Don't know if we'll go 1 through 6 or 6 through 1. We're going to do 2 episodes. We'll do one covering the girls and one covering the boys. But before we move any forward, I'd like you guys, I said a little bit about where you're from, but I'd like you guys to kind of plug where folks can find you, because you are experts and you have strong opinions, but you've also seen a lot of these teams. Let folks know where they can find you. We'll start with you, Chris.
All right. Well, my name's Chris Jollay, and I run novahoops.com. novahoops.com on Twitter or X, predominantly at novahoops.com. We got scores and schedules, game stories, history of the region, all that kind of stuff up on there. So love for you to give us a hit.
I got to plug him too. I go to that site every day and I'll pass the lie detector test. He does rankings, which private and public. He does player of the week. He does profiles. There's a lot of great information for student athletes that us guys our age used to get in the paper when we used to read it. So check out Nova Hoops.
Yep. And Matt Hatfield, you've got a lot of platforms you're on now. So why don't we hear where we can find you and follow you?
Sure. Publisher for VirginiaPreps.com or the Virginia High School Set on the Rivals Network, powered by Yahoo Sports. We do also a podcast show that used to be on radio. It's on the YouTube and the internet, also on Virginia Preps 757 Saturday Sports Talk with me and Coach Ed Young, who coaches at Nansemond River. On our site at Virginia Preps, we do all kinds of things as far as game stories, predictions, videos of some games. In fact, video interviews. They can go watch our Virginia Preps Classic, where we had a lot of different teams from around the state. Not just Tidewater, but a couple teams from Northern Virginia, a team from out west, and Tunstall came. So people can check that out. And we've got content all across the network too, recruiting stories as well.
All right.
I can plug Matt also, because I've actually texted Matt and said, one of your top 10s coming out. I got to see him. Weekly top 10s, 6 through 1. I watch those religiously, VA Preps. And Matt is like Google. If you need to know something, just ask him.
All right. And then we've got radio talk show host Justin Ditmore. He's a Hokie graduate, and he liked it so much he stayed out in that part of the state. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you, my man. Hey, I do talk radio on WFIR here in Roanoke. I do high school basketball. We do it on the internet on the Mixler site. It's the Haley Toyota High School Basketball Game of the Week. You can find it on Mixler, or you can find it on Facebook. Also do high school football as well. And I've been doing this for 34 years. I'm old.
Good. Same age. We're all the same age.
Yeah, I know.
So
me and Kirk went to school together. So,
40's coming.
No, Matt is saying we're not the same age. Y'all are the same age. Matt is young.
Yeah, but he's the one at the beach. So.
Right. That's right.
Well, but listen, when you got a 7-year-old niece running around running your ragged all day, sometimes you do feel a little older than what you are. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead on and Kirk, you tell folks where they can find me, And I guess you too. But why don't you promote us? Tell folks where they can find our show, and then we'll get right into it.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube. Just hit the subscribe button. For those technically challenged, and there are some coaches I talk to that are technically challenged. To do that, you either have to have a YouTube account, be signed into Google, or be signed into Facebook, because those are the big ways. And then also follow us on Twitter at the Kirk and Bird. The other platforms, just Google the Kirk and Bird Show. That's it.
All right. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with Class 6, and we're going to do boys on this episode. And we're at our quarterfinals. We had some really exciting regional games, but we're not going to cover those. But ultimately, they were a lot of fun. But all those teams advanced, and we were just talking. A lot of these Northern Virginia teams, especially with the Class 6 Region B, it may be called a home and away, but the crowds can travel. It's not like the folks from up here are having to travel out to Roanoke or to even Hampton Roads. So we have some games. And that I'll start with you, Chris. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who's playing in the Class 6 matchup with the boys? Since it's Class 6, when it comes to a lot of the high schools, they are more in the northern part of the state.
Yeah, we have a big advantage, obviously, in the Class 6 brackets. We get 6 out of the 8 teams most years. Unless a couple fall to a Fredericksburg team. This year we cleaned it. 6 on the guys' side, 6 on the girls' side. Big advantage, obviously, for us. On the guys' side, the teams that made it, Hayfield and West Potomac. West Potomac defeated Hayfield in the Occoquan 6C regional final. You had South Lakes, as expected, winning the region. A little bit of an upset. Madison came in with them. Not a huge upset because they're so well coached and very competent school. Kind of upset Wakefield to get that second spot. South Lakes has beaten Madison 4 times this year. And then you had Patriot and Potomac, which you kind of expected as well to be the regional final down there. All 6 of those teams are in. As we discussed, probably from the Northern Virginia side, you're going to get, and Matt can talk to this, those Oscar Smith and Landstown are 2 very competent teams. They're going to match up with the Occoquan district, Hayfield and West Potomac. Those should be again, I defer to Matt on this, but pretty much toss-ups, I would think, both of them. On the other side of the bracket, South Lakes and Patriot are strong favorites to make it to the semifinals.
When I look at these 8 teams, I want to say, because we've had both you and Matt on the show, but it looks like a lot of them we kind of caught, like we pretty much we were saying that it would probably be Patriot and Potomac. They advanced. I'm pretty sure most people predicted Landstown and Oscar Smith. So that's 4 of the teams right there. Hayfield is in, but I think, Chris, I might have mentioned with you West Potomac.
They're hot. They're hot, man.
Maybe sneak in there. I kind of called it, not really. Maybe, but tell us, guys, tell us a little bit about this Madison school. Oh, and South Lakes. I'm sorry. South Lakes was one that a lot of us. So I think for me, I'd like to know a little bit more about Madison and West Potomac. Okay. We can go over all the matches, but I think almost the rest of those teams, we kind of thought they might be here.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. South Lakes and Patriot, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago or last week. That's been kind of building for a while. 2 teams, South Lakes led by Jordan Scott, major D1 prospect, and David Rochester, and some of these guys that came over from O'Connell, Brian Kennedy, who came over from Westfield. They lost to Hayfield last year in the state tournament. This year, they're much more one of the favorites, you would say. West Potomac, you're right. We did kind of call that when we did the show last week. They've traditionally gone through the district tournament, upset people as like the 5th seed in the loaded Patriot district. This year they didn't do that. So we were like, hey, maybe it's their time in the regional tournament this year. That turned out to be the case. beating a pretty hot Hayfield team that have won a lot of games in a row. West Potomac, Justin Edwards is a guy that's just killing it on the boards, about a 6'4", 6'5" guy who I believe is a junior. He may still even be a sophomore, but I think he's a junior. He's been killing it on the offensive boards in general, that team, with Chris Morrison as their floor general. They're a very dangerous team. And the fact now that they're playing at home against Oscar Smith is going to be a good example for them, a good omen for them, obviously. Although the flip side is Hayfield going down to play Landstown. Obviously, Landstown a big advantage with that down there, because that's the tough road trip going down to the beach. Madison, real quick, Madison is a good team. They started slowly. They got a lot of football players in. Darren Nicely, their 6'5" center, being one big example. They run a very, very efficient 5-out offense. They play defense, a little contingent on how they're shooting from outside to supplement Nicely and all that. But they're probably not going to win states. But if you're not playing well, you can be in trouble against them.
Matt, let's get your thoughts on it. You know those 7-5-7 teams, Oscar Landstown, and that's the other quarter of most of the Class 6 teams.
Yeah, and just to quickly follow up on what Chris said, I really like what David Houston at West Potomac's done. They came down to our classic and played Kings Fork, a really good Class 5 team that was once in Class 4, made a couple of state semifinal trips, lost it close because Morrison got hurt in that game in the fourth quarter, but they got him back healthy now to go with Edwards. Really good pair. That underclassman duo has been leading the way for them, and I think they're going to be a hard matchup for Oscar Smith, even though Oscar Smith may be a pinch more athletic in some spots in season. The Tigers, if they're hitting outside shots, it's going to be hard for West Potomac to take that game. But ultimately, I think Landstown beating Oscar Smith pretty handily in the regional final might have showed some things for West Potomac to do. I thought they attacked well against Hayfield in the region championship. The zone worked at times. I thought at the beginning of the year, guys, the three teams that I labeled, I think they were all kind of 1A, 1B, 1C, and then we ranked them 1, 2, 3, were South Lakes, Patriot, and Landstown in the state to win the championship.
Yeah.
And I feel like Patriot beating South Lakes head-to-head gave them a leg up at that time. South Lakes has the most dynamic prospect with Jordan Scott. Patriot got the splash newcomer to go with a seasoned core with Isaiah Vick and Desmond Hopkins back from their state Final Four and state runner-up team from a year ago, with Tay Barber coming in from Osborne, who's committed to Harvard. But I think Landstown's improved the most. They were 4-4 at one point, lost to a city rival in Salem, who they later avenged that loss in a major win. It was the 400th career victory for Coach Dwight Robinson, and they've rolled off now like 16, 17 straight victories, and they got a sophomore 6'6" wing kid by the name of Deshaun Spellman. Remember him? He is going to be special. He's got an offer from Old Dominion, among others, and he's had like 17, 18 rebounds the last 2 playoff games, doing so with their second best player, arguably, and Xavier Cleveland, who was an all-region player last year as a freshman, out due to illness. They'll get Cleveland back. So collision course, because Class 6 is different than 5-1 guys. They've changed the bracket football. You'll get actually a Landstown South Lakes matchup potentially if the 1 seeds hold in the semifinals. I think that's going to give Patriot the leg up of maybe the path not being as fierce. If they see, say, an Oscar Smith second round, they beat him a year ago. If they see a West Potomac, I think they feel confident about that matchup, not as a gimme in either situation. So that might give Patriot the best path to get to the final. Whereas if they see South Lakes, they've beaten them once. South Lakes wants revenge. If they see Landstown, they beat Landstown a year ago. But I feel like Landstown's shown the most improvement from game 1 to now, and they might be the most dangerous in that field of 8.
Yeah, Matt, that's
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think the best first round game or quarterfinal game is South Lakes and Potomac. That's a great game. That's going to be Tuesday in Reston. I think that's the one I'm going to pick. I talked to Coach Mills Friday night, and I talked to Coach Desmond today. But that is, I mean, they are a very good team, probably underrated. They were young. I don't know if they're young anymore. And, I also wanted to point out, I saw South Lakes in Madison on Friday night. Great environment. That is a very, very big gym, and it was almost full. And it was just like old school. South Lakes is a basketball school. I really like that. Madison, I was really a little surprised. South Lakes just, I think, beat them by 30-something, and they never got into it. South Lakes offense, just our defense, excuse me, their defense was intense. But I really feel that, Patriot, I agree with you about Patriot, having that path. But I wanted to ask you, Landstown is dangerous. A lot of people are not talking about them, but they get the two-time defending state champion, Hayfield Hawks and Carlos Poindexter. For those 7-5-7 folks in basketball, I mean, what do you think about that matchup?
I think they played a couple years during the COVID shortened season. They were actually played each other in our classic, and we were originally going to have Green Run play Hayfield, but a COVID situation prevented Green Run from playing. So Landstown subbed in, and that was when Landstown had Donald Hand Jr., who's now at Boston College. But this is a different Hayfield team. I think the guy who's done the most with less, I should say, is Carlos Poindexter. As great a job as he's done the last 2 years winning back-to-back championships, and Chris can probably speak to this. This is a brand new starting five. And granted, there's some players that were off the bench last year, like Ramirez and Phoenix Card, part of those teams, but they were not mainstays. They were not your Greg Joneses, your DJ Holloways, your David King, your Donovan Bass Briscoes that were part of the championship groups. And I think they got better. If you were going to rank it, those two might have improved the most from game 1 to game 22. And I'm with you, Kirk. I think the best quarterfinal matchup is Potomac with South Lakes, because they led Patriot after one quarter in that Region 6B final before Patriot found its footing in the second quarter, took the lead, didn't look back. But they got a 1-2 punch with Kenneth de Guzman and Terrence Bethea, who could really, if they're on, give South Lakes problems. But Chris, you know this, Hayfield, brand new team essentially, and what Coach Poindexter's done is pretty impressive and remarkable.
Yeah, it's something you could see coming. I know, like 5 years ago, Matt, I visited Patriot, and I kind of could see the depth building. You know what I mean? You could see lots of kids getting into tryouts. Same thing at Hayfield. They're building programs there where even when they do lose that many kids like Hayfield did, they can kind of reload a little bit and still be a factor. And yeah, they've improved rapidly. I would agree with your assessment. Landstown has also improved rapidly, but Hayfield as well. And Carlos is just a great coach that somehow still doesn't get enough credit for what he does.
And those are both coaches that have won state championships, right?
Yeah, Landstown won theirs a few years ago when they beat Lake Braddock, and they had been snake bitten in some close ones. You guys remember they lost that triple overtime semifinal to Westfield. They lost back in 2004-05 to Woodside with Calvin Baker and Stephon Welsh, who ironically enough coaches Woodside now. They lost to Colonial Forge in a game that went down to the last minute. So they had some tough losses, but they've gotten over that hurdle, and they just won their 8th regional title. So it goes to culture, guys. I mean, this is going to be, I think, the theme with all these teams from Class 6 down to Class 1. There's a winning culture, an attitude. You have to defend. And at the end of the day, that's how you get to this point.
Yeah. Yeah. So we could talk each class all day, but let's go ahead on and kind of wrap up 6. Do we have any predictions? Or Justin, I want to give you a chance here. I know you don't have a lot of you don't have Class 6 really out in your area. But have you heard anything about these teams? Or you just any thoughts?
The only thing I've heard is I follow Dwight Vick on Twitter.
Right.
And I think it's his son.
His son
Isaiah.
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to go with the Hokie connection.
Okay.
So that's the only thing I have to add.
That's how you do
for
it.
Class 6 is when in doubt, I go with the Hokie connection.
That's how you
and there's probably others. That's the only one I know.
So you're picking Patriot.
Yeah.
You like Patriot over South Lakes in the finals.
And that would, based on a little bit I know, that's a very good pick. Okay. Let me just say, if Dwight Vick's son went to Madison, I'd say, I don't know. But he's of all the other 7. But I think you're gonna luck out with this one.
Yeah, hey, broken clocks right twice a day. I mean, come on.
Yeah. All right, Kirk.
It's interesting. I actually, I didn't realize that South Lakes and Patriot were on opposite sides of the bracket. I didn't look the way they've done it. So those two could meet in the final. Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay. So here's my prediction. And it's a little bit of bulletin. Sherman Rivers, that guy is awesome. One of the best coaches. And I picked them at the beginning of the year. Okay. I went to South Lakes on Friday night. South Lakes is clicking. I like South Lakes beating Patriot in the finals. South Lakes, Brian Kennedy is a guard, unbelievable football player. There's a kid named Tyler Andre, streaky shooter. Jordan Scott is a silent. He doesn't jump out at you. You know, remember Rusty, I said, hey, I just saw him and I couldn't believe he's a top 100 player. If you look at him, he does everything right. He plays well without the ball. He's 6'7", got an incredible first step, great passer. So I just want to put that out there that I'm picking South Lakes over Patriot. I will not be surprised at all if Patriot, with Isaiah Vick, Tay Barber, and the great cast they have over there, wins it. And I would say the thing, though, South Lakes has a big upset alert. Potomac is a great team. That's a great program. Anthony Mills, they're underlooked, you know, underappreciated. And I also think for the other bracket, look out for West Potomac.
All right. Chris.
Well, you know I'm going to pick a Northern Virginia team.
I know I was going to say,
because
you got six choices, bro.
But it's also right.
Great. It's great because if I don't pick a Northern Virginia team here in Class 5 and Class 4, you know, I might be hurting a little compared to the beach teams in Richmond a little. So I'm riding Northern Virginia. Quick shout out to Oscar Smith, though. I've seen him play. I've seen him play live. I saw him play against Wakefield. Man, are they athletic. And they can, if you sit back even in a zone, they can get hot from three too. So wouldn't surprise me if Oscar Smith got hot. Wouldn't surprise me if they had a lot better, game than they had against Landstown last game. But yeah, I'm going Northern Virginia, and Rusty and I talked about it last week with you guys. I'm Patriots on a mission this year.
Yep.
What I like about Patriot in this 8-team field is they're versatile enough to match up with different teams. You mentioned Justin Isaiah Vick. That's huge. He's improved a ton. He's a big 6'7" kid who can get it done inside. And they're also not going to be out athletic. They can play any kind of pace. They can play defense. For that reason, I'm going with Patriot to win it all. I wouldn't surprise me if any number of these teams, Madison's pushing it a little bit, because I think Madison could upset Patriot. Don't get me wrong. The odds of them, I think 3 upsets at this level would surprise me. Potomac South Lakes, we're very excited for that. We're going to cover that live. Potomac can win that game, but I'm kind of with you on that, Kirk. South Lake's playing real well right now, but I'm riding with Patriot, guys.
All right. Well, when I look at that, that bracket of Landstown. So if I told you the state championship was this game, no matter how if I told you Lansdowne's playing Hayfield in the state finals, you would be like, okay, yeah, that could easily have been a state finals game. South Lakes Potomac, yeah, okay, that could be a state finals game. I think that group of 4, whoever comes out of there, it's going to be good, but they're going to be kind of beat up. That's tough, and I could see any of those teams coming out. I think the favorite will be Patriot coming out of the other group. I think they have the path that would get them to the finals. That being said, if Patriot gets to the finals, I think they can beat everybody on the other bracket. And like Chris and I said, I interviewed Coach Rivers at the end of the state championship game last year, and brother was like, I will be back. He said that joint like a movie line, and I was like, oh, you're serious. And so I really like Patriot to be in the final and to beat whoever comes out of that other side. But I think South Lakes is a really good team, but I'm going to tell you, this is what I think it's going to be. I think Hayfield will be playing Patriot in that final. Coach Poindexter is going to pull some stuff, y'all. And I'll tell you, and Coach Rivers said this on our show, they did it the last 2 years with a tremendous amount of talent and great coaching. I think those guys, they're not as experienced players because these were role players and there's guys moved up from JV and all that. But I'm telling you, if they have that confidence and they get anybody over looking past them, I'm gonna say I think it's going to be Hayfield against Patriot. They've already played once this year, but I think Patriot takes them down.
Well, that would be a rematch of last year, guys. One thing I'll ask for Chris, to follow up on his point, great job by them considering they lost to transfer to IMG Academy, one of their big time Division I players, and Kareem Stagg to get to this point, I think is quite noteworthy. They might kick me out of the beach of the Bahamas if I don't take a Tidewater team here. I think South Lakes and Patriot, Justin's it's a safe pick to go with Patriot to win this thing. They got to the final, lost to Hayfield last year. But there's just something clicking right now for Landstown. Now Patriots got the experience edge, but they're really getting after it defensively. And here's the one thing that I think helps. If this was a quick turnaround, semis to finals, I'd go Patriot over Landstown in the final. But you have an 8-day break between the state semis on a Friday and the state finals the following Saturday. I think the semi game with Landstown South Lakes, what I'm projecting probably goes to like the last play, overtime. Championship could do that as well. And the thing I'm leaning with Landstown is they've won 3 overtime games in the last month, beating Maury, beating Kempsville after blowing a 29-point lead, which says 2 things. How'd you blow a 29-point lead? How'd you get it? And who's in the States? And then 3, beating Green Run. So they played some close games, I think, which will help them. So it's a close call. There's no real bad pick in this field. I'll go by the slimmest of margins, Landstown over Patriot.
All right. Cool. That's a good one. And Coach Dwight Robinson, by the way, that's my man. He coached with my brother. They're very good friends with
former JMU football stud. Yeah.
At Heritage, when they won that 2000 state championship, they ran the defense. So.
Played briefly in the CFL. People don't know. He was a really good football player back in his day.
He sure did. He and my brother, that's where they first got to know each other, because he was in the CFL when my brother was there. Yes. Yep. All right. So let's move. Go ahead, Kirk, and then move on.
Real quick, shameless plug for anybody watching us for the first time. 4 of the coaches in the quarterfinals for Class 6 have been on our show. You can look up the episodes. We've had Carlos Poindexter from Hayfield on more than once. We've had Coach Mike Desmond on. We've had Coach Anthony South Lakes. We've had Coach Anthony Mills on from Potomac. We've also had Sherman Rivers on multiple times from Patriot. And Coach Rivers' motivation, I am picking South Lakes. So here we go. 5.
All right, let's go with Class 5. All right, I'll just tell you what the matchups are. So you got Potomac Falls and Albemarle. You got LC Bird, Massaponax. You got Green Run, Maury, and Woodside, Kempsville. Matt, we'll start with you because a lot of these teams you've seen.
Yeah, and as far as the Tidewater teams go real quickly, it's Green Run, Maury. They've met a couple times before in the postseason. Maury's gotten the better of them, but this is another good job for Kenneth Harris, who has gotten them now to the States. I believe it's their 5th appearance after he was snake bitten in the postseason for a lot of years, falling short against Hampton and some teams that were really loaded. This is not the same group that he had a couple of years ago with Jacob Cooper, Elijah Kennedy, great 1-2 punch. Cooper now at Lander University. Kennedy went to Florida, then went to Texas State. But they have some football players that have added some toughness to their team with Knowledge Harrell, a Virginia Tech football commit, and Kassan Farrar, their dazzling quarterback, to go with David Trey Miller and Cash Jackson. Maury really gets after it defensively. Coach Brandon Plummer, that's his staple. They have a pit bull of a point guard in Adrian Newton who can really will his team to victory, which he did in the semifinals at Norfolk State against Kings Fork. And then the other 2 teams in Tidewater, you got Woodside, who won the state championship last year, had that thrilling comeback against Patrick Henry of Roanoke. Trevor Smith moved on to the University of Richmond, but they are imposing with their size, big 6'8" plus giant, and Silas Barksdale, who's got a bunch of offers. He's a junior. Jordan Houston's a freshman. He's really good. And they have depth as well as shooting. They hit 11 threes in their region quarterfinal game against Kickingham. Other team in that bracket, too, is Kempsville from Virginia Beach. Darren Centerland, heck of a player back in his day. He led Booker T. Washington to a state championship in 2006. They don't have any marquee player, but they've had some big comebacks this year, including down 29. And again, they lost to Landstown in overtime. And this is their first ever trip to the state playoffs in school history. Did have a kid get hurt late in the game against Green Run in the region championship in Jeremiah White, so keep an eye on him. And then your other 4 in that bracket, guys, you've got Albemarle, undefeated Potomac Falls. You also have Massaponax, and you have LC Bird. LC Bird's won the state championship before. Coach Troy Manns, his son Yuri, graduated, but this is just a balanced attack. They beat Albemarle by 11 in the region championship. And they're really clicking defensively. They can change a lot of things, trapping, pressing, zone, man. So I like their flexibility and versatility. Albemarle, I saw them a couple Mondays ago, guys, against Charlottesville in the Jefferson District Championship, and they were better than I thought. They're sneaky athletic. They got a guard in Ben Wesson who can really shoot it. And they hit 11 threes in the region championship, lost to LC Bird. So I think it's a tough matchup for Pot Falls and Coach Jeff Halls, who's on his way to Hall of Fame status. He's won a couple of state titles, and to be the only undefeated boys team of all the teams in the state at this stage is one heck of a job, because he doesn't have that marquee 6'8" Division I player. They're balanced, they're connected. So I think that actually, believe it or not, there's some great quarterfinal games, but to me, the best game is that Potomac Falls Albemarle quarterfinal, which I could see going down to the last shot.
Oh wow. Oh wow. Chris.
I just want to go to that game because I've seen Potomac Falls play 4 or 5 times and they are undefeated. My take is the athleticism is going to really hurt them. When South Lake scrimmaged them, the South Lake's way more athletic. They're very solid. Josh Prince at guard, and then was it Colby Margano, 6'6", more of a he's not a big, but he's in between, very much slasher. But I'm wondering about their athleticism. Can they keep up? I think that's going to be a liability. And since you've seen Albemarle, what's your take on, that matchup?
I'm actually picking to give it away, Albemarle to win it close against Pot Falls by like 1 or 2 points. I think Potomac Falls, as you know, Rusty, Kirk, you know this from seeing them. The last 2 games they've won in the playoffs here have been 2-point games here against Massaponax and Harrisonburg in the region semis. So you feel like getting this far undefeated, it is one heck of a feat. And they do have some with Opiola and Margano and the pieces. They're there, but they don't have that one difference maker athlete. Plus, at this point, and Chris knows this too, haven't seen him, when they had his son, Landon Halls, a couple years ago, they had a guy that could stretch the defense, that could go hit 6-7 threes in a ball game. I'm not sure they have that one guy that can be that zone buster, that 3-point marksman in this game. So it's a tough matchup for them. Either one, they got Bird or Albemarle is going to be a hard matchup. But at this point, the teams from Tidewater and across the bracket are more athletic. They're not necessarily better coached or better defensively or better connected, but there is an athleticism advantage. And I would think the teams in Tidewater might have it. And Woodside has the best size of the 8 in the field by far.
Right. Okay. So you like Albemarle coming out of there. Justin Ditmore, another Hokie connection. Troy Mans coaches LC Bird, and they're a very good team.
So I'm picking LC Bird. There you go.
I like LC Bird over Massaponax.
I was going to feed you that, Justin. I was, because Troy went to Mason and Virginia Tech, but I was going to.
And he played his high school ball at Patrick Henry here in
Roanoke. Oh, okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
He was a teammate. Was it Curtis Staples, Justin, if I recall right? Or
yes.
Was it?
Yes.
Curtis Staples.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, and Curtis played 2 years at PH, and then Curtis prepped at a place in Maryland for a year, then went to Oak Hill for a year. And and Troy and Curtis played together. They were part of those PH teams back in the early 90s, late 80s when
they great teams at PH. Yeah,
they were beating Alonzo Mourning and Indian River. So
that's right.
To the bottom half, Matt, of 5 is all 7-5-7. Maury Kempsville. Let me think here for a second. Green Run and Woodside. Woodside's the defending champion. Woodside's big. I think the winner is coming out of there, of the state championship.
Oh, I'll let you go, Matt. But I think of Mr. Jollay.
I was just going to say we got to go, Chris,
about the top part, because he's seen Potomac Falls and he knows Massaponax. So I just wanted to, while we're up there, because that's the only place Chris can pick from. But go ahead.
All right. So I agree with pretty much everything you guys have said, to include Matt. What you do have to factor in is Potomac Falls is at home against Albemarle, which is
great home court advantage.
Yeah,
yes.
That's a huge advantage. Now, normally, if did I get this right, Matt, that it's Potomac Falls, Albemarle, LC Bird, and Massaponax are on the one side of the bracket, right?
Yes, that's right.
Yep.
Now, are we positive that because I was told, like, for example, I haven't seen all the quarterfinal sites for Tuesday. I know that in the past, the rule was you couldn't play the quarterfinal in your home gymnasium. So, like, for example, I know Hampton girls and boys in Class 4, and it's a different division. They're playing at, I believe it's Heritage High in Newport News, a doubleheader. So have they said, Chris, you would know this better than me, have they said that the game is definitely at Potomac Falls, or is it in that area of Potomac Falls?
Matt, I have no idea.
Never
I have
seen the
no
news
idea.
before.
I don't even try to figure it out until the
Gotcha.
Monday and Tuesday tweets
Gotcha.
come.
No, you're good.
Basically,
Because I would agree with you. If it's in Potomac Falls' gym, that would swing the game maybe. But if it's in a different gym in that area, I think that's not as big a factor.
well, I agreed, but I will say if they play it at Riverside or somewhere like that, it's still going to be a big advantage.
We're familiar with it. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Good point.
here's my thing. I couldn't even tell you where the semifinal would be, but I will say this. On Potomac Falls' side of the bracket, first of all, they're on the right side of the bracket. Albemarle is a very good team, but they're not a team that scares me coming up here. It's going to be a close game. Now, if you had said, Potomac Falls after beating Harrisonburg by 2 and after beating Massaponax by 2, that's not what you're looking at with a state contender normally. They should be beating those teams at home by 10, 15 points at least. But that's not how Potomac Falls plays it, really, as you guys are aware. At home against Albemarle, I'm not scared. Then I will go ahead. By the way, a little piece of trivia. I believe I have Troy Manns' George Mason jacket in my closet right now. I'm not sure. I'm going to put that on later in the broadcast because I want to show that to Troy. He's a George Mason guy. He's not a Virginia Tech guy. I mean, this is I'm just going to tell you that right now.
Thank you so much. There's a coach out there in the Richmond area that Dwight Vick is really good friends with. It's just, you're right.
No,
it's
Dwight,
not
well, he started at Tech and transferred to Mason, right? He started at Tech and transferred to Mason. Right?
It was one way or the other.
He went
from Tech because I covered.
He went to
He'll see this and text one of us and let us know. So
he went from George Mason to Virginia Tech, and that's why I have his jacket because he left it up there.
Yeah.
He wanted to get closer to home, Justin, to Patrick Kennedy and all that.
That's right.
Anyway, to go on, LC Bird, they've improved rapidly. Talking about teams that have improved rapidly, I think it's Deron Moore down there, Matt. Young kid that can play. That's still a young team. I'm going to tell you, I don't know. There are a lot of young guys that haven't been in this situation before. I like Potomac Falls' side of the bracket. That's all I'm going to say until they get to the death Virginia Beach side of the bracket, on the other side. But I'm for Po Falls at maybe making it to the championship there at least.
Okay. All right. Matt, now can you tell us a little bit about that other side of the bracket, the Green Run Maury and Woodside Kempsville?
Well, to Chris's point, that's the side you want to be on for sure, because you don't have to worry about the gauntlet in a quarterfinal, semifinal of whatever it is, Woodside, Maury, Green Run, or Kempsville. I would say of those 4, Kempsville's your Cinderella dark horse because they've never been there before. And I could see it Friday. They had played 2 one-point games with Green Run. They lost 1, won 1. And I thought it'd be a tight game. And Green Run just jumped on them. They got down 4-0 and got up by 21 before the second quarter even was over. And I feel like that's something that they got to make up for. Also, not having a whole lot of size is a big problem for them as well in this matchup. Woodside, I've seen some lapses in their play. So if you told me they got to the finals or the semis and didn't bring their A game, it would not stun me. If they bring their A game, I don't know if they blow away the field, but to me, they're at least 6 to 8 points better than the rest of the field. Now, the question is going to be, do you bring your A game? And then the pressure of repeating as state champs, it's real. It's a real thing. It's not some made up, hocus pocus. I think that does exist. Maury has trouble scoring at times. I could see the Maury Green Run game being an intense 26-26 type of game going to the fourth quarter. You say that's crazy. That's unwatchable. But they lost in overtime to Landstown in our event 35-32. So they will get after it defensively and strap up, and they don't mind playing that type of ugly game, which would be interesting if they got through the bracket and saw a Potomac Falls, an Albemarle, even an LC Bird. So I think your two long shots of the 8 are Kempsville and Massaponax. I don't know that they have the firepower or the size / experience. I think Green Run might be a dark horse as well because it feels like they're a year away. All their best players are juniors. So they could be laying the groundwork for next year to win it or be right there. The same might be said for Bird, although Bird, to Chris's point, I think has gotten better more than anybody in their balance scoring. You don't have one go-to guy. So they're the sneaky, dangerous team of the field. But if I had to kind of break it down right now, I'm leaning with Woodside over Bird in the championship. But I wouldn't be surprised if someone from Tidewater, even if Bird won it, or even if Potomac Falls and Admiral got to the championship and had a great chance to win it, depending on who they saw.
Yeah, I'm pulling for Potomac Falls. Halls is Matt. He may have passed 500 this year. He's awfully close. Great guy, energetic coach. He okay, Chris. He passed it. Fun to watch him coach too. A lot of energy. He gets the students yelling and all that. So they're my sentimental favorite. I just think a really good athletic team is a buzzsaw for them. Woodside's size is a big problem. Deep, a great shooter. I would say that Maury is who they have to worry about, but I just think that Woodside is too much. Woodside defeated Patriot. That kind of tells you a little something right there. I like Woodside over Bird also. Would love to see Pot Falls win it. I just think for them to win 3 games is going to be a tough order. But I think Woodside is they're going to do it again. Their depth is a little bit of an issue possibly. And then if Maury can defend that size, they could upset them. But I like Woodside. Woodside over Bird.
All right, and then I'll close this out with my selections. I'm going to pull a Justin Ditmore here. How can I not pick something Bird? Okay, so LC last name Bird. Okay, so no, that Bird, I've seen Bird over the last 20 years have a great program. They didn't always win state championships, but they would get there, or they just had great talent, but they had won too. So I'd like Bird to come out of the top of that bracket and have them playing Woodside in the state final. And I'll say this: Woodside won that championship last year, but Patrick Henry, I don't know if Woodside won it or Patrick Henry blew it, but it was an exciting game either way. That was just an amazing game. Woodside did win it because they came back, they made big shots, and it was super fun. But I haven't seen anyone else's schedule, but I've looked at Woodside, and they beat Hampton twice, they beat Patriot, they beat some really good teams. So I like Woodside to beat Bird in the finals. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to Class 4. And I think this is where we could start to get some Ditmore, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. That's right.
I love
correct.
it. I love it. So in these brackets, we've got Charlottesville against Tuscarora, Loudoun Valley, Jefferson Forest. We've got Hampton, Dinwiddie, Varina, and Churchland. I'll let Matt set the stage, and then Justin, you can give your opinion after that. Go ahead, Matt.
I think Varina, you go in as the favorite. They're 2-time defending state champ. They have 1,000-point scorer at the point, KJ Weish. They've played some quality teams from the Richmond area. Played Green Runners in the Class 5 state tournament. They're used to this spot before, and they're athletic across the board. Damari Carter football stand out for them. They hit the boards. They hit threes. If they run into Hampton in the semifinals, that could be an hellacious game. That could be just a great battle. I give Varina the edge over Churchland. Dinwiddie's the Cinderella here. They were a 7 seed in their region and beat a 3 seed in Cortland, a 2 seed in Henrico. Other side of the bracket, Charlottesville, Tuscarora, Loudoun Valley, Jefferson Forest. It's more up for grabs. The best quarterfinal game looks like Charlottesville and Tuscarora because you're looking at 23-4 against 23-3. Charlottesville's big. Tuscarora, as Chris can attest to, has a big-time shooter in Jaden Johnson who can light it up from 3. I watched a game earlier in the year online when they played, I believe it was Westpo, and he had like 31 and had 5 or 6 threes. He can light it up. And Loudoun Valley, well coached. Chad Dawson's won titles before when he had Jordan Miller, who's been in the NBA, was a standout in last year's Elite 8 and Final Four run for Miami, and Jim Larinaga. And Jefferson Forest to me is a team that's gotten better. I think Coach Jeff Monroe there. They beat EC Glass. They've had some tough matchups in their Seminole district. So I think you go in with Varina as the favorite, and then your next favorite, believe it or not, might be Hampton. Although other side of the bracket, I think you can make a compelling case for any of the 4. I was a bit surprised that Tuscarora actually lost to Loudoun Valley after winning the earlier matchups.
Yeah, Justin,
yeah. And to talk about Jefferson Forest, kind of surprised actually that they made the quarterfinals. I saw them earlier in the year play Cave Spring. They beat Cave Spring. Jeff Forest, 18-7. They have a good looking roster. They have kids who shoot threes. They have good size. They're athletic. They can run around. They have a young man named Isaiah Scott. His father is Hillary Scott, the head coach at Lynchburg and is an All-American player at Roanoke College and was an assistant with Penn State for a while. I have a young man named Cooper Stam I watched score 60 points in the 2-game tournament at Cave Spring High School over the holidays. So when they get hot, they hit their threes, they handle the ball well. They've got good size. They've got 3 or 4 guys that are about 6'4". So a lot of size won't bother them. And I just feel like they're a team that's just playing well at the right time. They've gotten hot at the right time. Things are going well. And, you know, I never liked teams from this area. Division 4 is so tough now because so many teams have dropped down from 5.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you're talking about Hampton and Varina. I mean, for years, that was, you know, Division 5, Division 6, whatever. You know, you never saw them. Now they're dropping down. And it makes the road in Division 4 a lot tougher. And I think that's where Jeff Forrest is going to struggle.
So, Chris Jollay, we want to get you to pipe in. We got 2 Nova teams. Jefferson Forest is coming to Purcellville to face a Landon Conrad led Loudon Valley team. But before I let you go, Jordan Miller started at George Mason and transferred to Miami. Tell us about your take, Chris, on those 2 games. With Jefferson Forest coming to Loudon Valley and then Tuscarora going down to Charlottesville.
Yeah, well, Justin, that was a great point about the Class 4 teams dropping down. It's hard for me to remember sometimes. I know Woodgrove just dropped down the Class 4, and I forget sometimes. Tuscarora really got a tough draw there at Charlottesville. You know, and again, I don't know if they're playing at Charlottesville or if it's just in that area. It's still a hell of an advantage. I don't know what's going on down there, but everybody's complaining about the refs. I know John Hanley played them not too long ago and was very mad that Charlottesville shot like 50 free throws down there to their like 18 or whatever it was. I don't know anything about it. I didn't watch the game. But Aiden Yates, kid for Charlottesville, that's a tough matchup. They got height like
6'8" left-hander, isn't he?
Yeah, I think so, right? If I'm thinking of the right kid.
Yep.
Yeah, he can shoot and score. They can shoot. They're big. Tuscarora. Now, as I mentioned last week, Tuscarora, the wild card is Jaden Johnson. If you haven't defended him before, he's tough, man. I mean, he will get his points whether you like it or not, and he'll get to the line. But that's just a terrible matchup. Hats off to Loudon Valley. Landon Conrad, Joey Danielson, a senior-laden team. Now they get to play up here against Jefferson Forest, which is, I guess, from what Justin says, should be kind of a winnable, but maybe a toss-up type of game. Great coaching, as you mentioned. I don't have Jordan Miller's jacket. I wish I had his jacket signed. But yeah, Class 4, tough road for the Northern Virginia.
You know, I know a lot of kids at Tuscarora. I really like Landon Conrad. I think that's a good, actually, I think Charlottesville should be favored. But Valley's on a roll. They beat a Woodgrove team with a very good 6'7" center, Dane Marsh, kind of an old school guy. They're hot. And Tusky, I was at the game, Matt, Jaden and Chris. Jaden Johnson, last possession, had a nice, clean look. And he's a scorer. And they got the rebound. He got a second. Now, I'm not pointing that out because he missed 2 shots. I'm saying if Jaden gets another shot and winning a game, Jaden is going to hit that winner. I like Tusky and I like Loudon Valley to meet in that semifinal. And I like Tusky to win that. But Tuscarora and Loudon Valley are going to have a lot of problems with athleticism. And I'm going to be a homer here. And I'm going with the Crabbers. I played in that gym, that small gym.
You did the layup line in that gym.
Yeah, no, I may have gotten in that one, but I didn't score against them. But no, I think Hampton is tough. That guard Malik Sealy, he can be streaky. He needs to be on. And their big man is very good. They got a couple of big guys. I like Hampton beating Tuscarora in the final. But don't be surprised if Valley and Tuscarora go down because those are like neck-to-neck matchups. So I'm being a little sentimental. But Jaden Johnson, and by the way, they got a guard named T.J. Duggan who scored over 30 points multiple times. Chris, he was your player of the week one time. And they've got quite a few nice things going on at Tusky. So, I would love to be wrong and have Tuscarora or Valley win that, but I like the Crappers.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you, Kirk. I said it, I think, when we had Chris on the show, but I don't know the other side of the bracket, but the thing I know is this: Hampton only has 2 losses, and they're the Woodside. Okay, the last team to play them close was my Bruins. We only lost by 3 in the playoffs. Everybody else looks like they're beaten by like 30, 40 points. I think that the harder game will be, I think they'll get by Dinwiddie. Varina, it's clearly a great team, won multiple state championships over the last couple of years. But I think Hampton's toughest game will be Varina, and they'll be up to it. And I think we're going to see Varina against Loudoun Valley in the final. We're going to see Hampton. I'm sorry, we're going to see Hampton in the final against Loudoun Valley, and Hampton winning it all.
Yeah.
All right. So now we'll go. Everybody gave their opinion. Let's move on to Class 3. Class 3, we've got a lot more teams that are moving out west in the 7-5-7. So we've got the top part of the bracket. We've got Northside and Spotswood. We've got Western Albemarle, Tunstall, and then Lake bottom bracket. We've got Lake Taylor and Meridian. Meridian is up here, formerly the old George Mason High School, and James Monroe against Booker T. Let's start out with you, Justin, with that top part of the bracket.
Yeah, well, you got the defending state champs in Northside. Coach Billy Pope has over 600 wins. He's got 2 state titles. Northside starts defending you when you get off the bus, and they don't stop until they put you back on the bus. I mean, they play full court. They're relentless. They're starting 5. Cy Hardy and Mikkel Harvey are just outstanding guards. And the worst part is for everybody else is they're both just juniors. So they won state titles as a sophomore. Now they're one of the best in the state as juniors. They got 4 or 5 kids that can hit threes anywhere, all the time. The pressure is just relentless. And I watch them wear down EC Glass. I watch them wear down Cave Spring. I watch them wear down Tunstall. It's just relentless defense. Offensively, they can hit threes. They've got a couple size guys that are role guys. They're not going to get more than 4-6 points a game, but they defend and they rebound. And they know when they get the ball, they'll kick it back out, and they'll have somebody open for 3. That Northside Spotswood game, Spotswood just lost their first game of the year to Western Albemarle in the regional final. I've seen Spotswood play. They beat Patrick Henry at the Chance Harmon Classic, and Spotswood's really good. They're young as well. Last year, they were playing a bunch of sophomores and juniors, and everyone told me, look, this year, next year, they're going to be good. Well, yeah, they are. So that Northside Spotswood game, the reason I think it'll be tough for Northside is Spotswood has a lot of good guards, a lot of good ball handlers. Now, whether you're used to dealing with that kind of pressure for the whole game, we'll see. But I think that's a fantastic matchup. I never bet against Billy Pope, but that is a fantastic matchup. The other one, Tunstall and Western Albemarle, I've seen Tunstall play. They have 2 losses, 1 to Northside, 1 to Oscar Smith.
Wow.
That's it. I watched them beat Cave Spring down at Castle Coliseum in the semifinals on Friday night. They've got a point guard, Jalen Edmonds, and he's 5'8". He's a senior, and this is kind of an odd comparison, but you guys will get it. He reminds me of Mateen Cleaves. He's this short kid, and all he does is doesn't turn the ball over, hounds you on defense, and he's able, when he penetrates, to get into the lane, he has this little floater. And it's just beautiful. He drives in, he just puts it up, and it just rainbows right into the basket. They've got some good size. They've got a Jamarcus Brown who's 6'4", Kobe Morrison 6'3". Morrison can shoot threes. Brown's a physical player down low. They run a lot of guys in off the bench. He'll play 8 or 9 guys. They changed the game against Cave Spring. They were trailing, decided to start pressuring the ball from the inbounds, and that stymied Cave Spring's offense, and they were able to come back. They won by 15. So Tunstall, really good team. I really like them. Western Albemarle, I mean, they beat Spotswood. So that's all you have to know. Western Albemarle playing well as well. So I think this side of the bracket is just, I think you're going to have two fantastic games in these two quarterfinals. One thing I hate is you could have either Spotswood and Western Albemarle play in the semifinals. They just played in the regional finals. Or you could have Tunstall and Northside play for the second time in 3 games, which I get the travel thing, but I hate it. But I never bet against Billy Pope, so I would pick Northside in that side, but I think they're going to be 2 fantastic games.
Yeah. Matt, why don't you tell us a little bit about that other side of the bracket with all of those 7-5-7 teams in Middle Virginia, Northern region.
Taylor and Booker T, Rusty. This is like the 80s, man. Booker T won back-to-back 85, 86, and those Booker T teams were good. Booker T's back in it, but yeah, Lake Taylor, Max Preps has had them ranked in the top 10 in the state. That's public and private. How about those 2 teams?
Yeah, back in the Barry Hamler, Booker T days. And real quick, one thing about Justin's point, Tunstall, love the job DeMarcus Morrison's done. They came down to our classic, lost again to Oscar Smith. Guys, they made the near 4-hour trip and had more fans they had like a fan bus that came down supporting that team and those guys like Jalen Edmonds and Kobe Morrison and Jamarcus Brown as a rebound machine than Oscar Smith did. And Oscar Smith travels, they bring fans. So I was just thoroughly impressed with that and the job he's done. But as good as those teams are, and Coach Pope's a Hall of Famer, Chad Edwards is an awesome coach at Spotswood. Even Darren Maynard's done a really good job over the years, year after year, consistently a winner at Western Albemarle. His brother, Greg Maynard, coaches at Albemarle, by the way. But the team that has the most size, similar like we talked about with Woodside in Class 5, is Lake Taylor. They have 2 6'8" giants, or as some may call them, aircraft carriers, and Elijah Moss Washington, who's committed to Syracuse, signed with Syracuse for football, and Rodney Mello Baines. They are a problem. I think yesterday, or it might have been Saturday, it was when they played Booker T in the region final at Norfolk State. They combined for like 34 rebounds, the 2 of them. And that's with an official stat guy. It's not like, somebody's just giving them 15 rebounds. So that was impressive. Now, the thing about Lake Taylor that I worry about for them, I think their path is it's an easier path to navigate because Meridian, Jim Smith, I think he's gotten this team to overachieve to a degree. Booker T. Washington, still young in the backcourt with Samarion Mitchell and that crew that they've got. James Monroe, they got a freshman guard who put up 60 plus in a game this year, Mikkel Minor, who is a scoring machine, but they're maybe a year away, like Booker T with Mitchell and that court. And they graduated a lot of seniors last year, Booker T. But the thing that I worry about with Lake Taylor is, you remember they lost the state championship one year to Monacan where they were rough from the free throw line. So if they got in a close, tense spot with Northside or Spotswood or fill in the blank, and it comes down to free throws, that could ultimately bite them in a spot in the state finals. So, and then they have some demons on that side, but those players weren't a part of those teams. Nonetheless, they got to make free throws. That was why they lost their one game they've lost to Maury in double overtime, which was a tough Eastern District rival. So I think the most compelling matchup, if we get it in the final, would be Lake Taylor and Northside, because even with those 2 6'8" guys, both of those seems like to get up and down. And that could be a game played in the 70s, and get your popcorn and enjoy it. But I will say this, in doing the top 10s this year, usually Class 5 is the best. I think the deepest this year for me and the hardest to do was Class 6 and Class 3 because of the depth that they had, and the upper crust of those teams in Class 6 and Class 3 were really good this year. So you can make a case for 4 or 5 teams to win the championship. And I think you begin with the defending champion Northside, and Lake Taylor has the most talent of the 8.
Lake Taylor's only lost to Maury. That's their only loss. So
yeah, no, I haven't seen Lake Taylor, but when I just want to point out a couple of things. When I see that Lake Taylor only has 1 loss, but they have beaten a lot of really good quality other class teams. Just first of all, you're just playing in Norfolk. Like every night's going to be a battle. But they've beaten Booker T, it looks like 2 or 3 times already. And most times it was an average of over 30 points, one game 40 points. They have beaten Landstown. Okay, a Class 6 team we're saying they could win it all. They've beaten Oscar Smith. Okay, they beat. It looks like they beat Oscar Smith. Their only loss again is tomorrow. They beat Menchville. Been a dominant team over the last couple of years, and Matt knows a lot more than I do, but by the scores, and they have, by the scores of the quality teams they've beaten, I'd say them and Northside, because I was very impressed with Northside in the state championship last year. But I would say I would go with Lake Taylor over Northside in the finals.
Here's real quick, I give them the edge. As many good wing players as there are, and Justin mentioned about Harvey and Hardy, that's a terrific tandem that we'll get to see even next year. Watch them in AAU and was really impressed with them. Minor, who I mentioned from James Monroe, Mitchell for Booker T, among others in this field. Cam Pacheco, we didn't talk about Spotswood. He's one of the smoothest, silky scorer for Spotswood. Lake Taylor, besides their size, their physicality on the perimeter, the way they can defend relentlessly on the perimeter in full court, it does sort of like just talking about with Northside, it wears you down. And then when the game comes down to a half-court game, they have 2 6'8" guys you got to deal with, and nobody else does. So I think even though Western Albemarle has 8 guys 6'3" or bigger, they have size to match up. It's not 6'8" and 6'8". So I think that with their athleticism gives them the slight edge. But I would not be surprised if someone told me Northside or Spotswood won the state championship. It wouldn't shock me if they did.
Chris
Valley. I was going to say Chris
Meridian.
Meridian's Downtown Falls Church, City of Falls Church, and then also James Monroe's in that Fredericksburg area. Let's talk about them.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about Meridian up against all of this. After listening to Justin and Matt, I'm like, geez, this is a Class 3 field. And we barely talked about Spotswood. I mean, geez. I mean, what a buzzsaw Jim Smith is running into here. Meridian's had a great year. Over 20 wins. They go out and they play the Skylines and the Kettle Runs, and they've done really well, and they've beaten those teams convincingly. They're a little bit young. They have a lot of core sophomores and juniors that are good, even though they also have a decent senior class. They play a lot of kids. But man, going up against 2'6", did you say 2 6'8" guys at Lake Taylor, Matt? I mean, that's just a nightmare matchup for Meridian. I mean, going to a buzzsaw, that was obviously the game James Monroe Meridian kind of wanted to have to get a game up here, against a slightly more beatable opponent. Jim Smith done a great job with Meridian, but I'm a little intimidated of this field, guys. I mean, you guys, Justin and Matt, did such a great job describing how good these teams are. I'm a little intimidated.
Yeah. No, I'll ask this at the very, very end, because we're going down in classes, but some of the quality of teams are going up. And I say that because when we get to Class 2, I think we can do that in like 20 seconds. Okay.
Yeah.
but let's get your final thought on Class 3, Kirk. Did you pick a winner?
Yeah. I like Lake Taylor. Very, very impressive. And I like Northside. Either of those teams can win it. This is a great field. I'm just going to be a 757 homer and pick Lake Taylor over Northside, but Northside's first round game is very impressive. And I would say this: Roanoke for hoops, that area is unbelievable. If you think about the players that have come out of Roanoke, and we like to get top heavy. You get your George Lynch, and you've got the various players that have come out of there. We talked about some of those great teams from the 80s. You go up and down that corridor, there are a lot of great basketball players. Richard Morgan was a UVA guy that was the mid-'80s. And then, J.J. Reddick, you go on and on. There's a lot of quality hoops down there for these people in 757 and Nova. You're going to find out how good they are down in Roanoke. But I like Lake Taylor. You look at who Lake Taylor's beaten. But going up against that size, this could be the most entertaining class of all 6. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've got our picks, and this is what we're going to do. We'll go through 2 and 1. But what I want to get from you all is, now let's take all of our champions, because basketball is not football. Okay, it's not like Class 6 football against Class 1 or 2. It's not going to work. But who do we think, if we did a tournament with these final 6, who's going to win? And I think because we've seen that, we see Lake Taylor's beating some of these teams. So hold that. Let's go ahead on to Class 2. I'll quickly say the brackets. We got Virginia High School against Martinsville, a team with a great amount of tradition over the years, numerous state championships. You've got Gretna against Graham, so you got the double G's. I'm sure Justin knows about them. You got John Marshall against Clark County, and Luray against Bruton. So let's start with you, Justin. You probably are very familiar with a number of these teams.
Yeah, and let's just pretend for a second that, say, John Marshall gets kidnapped. So,
Right?
we'll just put that out there that, their bus gets lost. Bus gets lost on the way to the tournament.
Unfortunately,
and
if their bus gets lost in the state championship, they can just walk to the Siegel Center.
John Marshall would
so-
split with Tech and UVA. John Marshall would split with Tech
Exactly.
and UVA.
They do Wizards too.
So
They would outscore UVA.
they beat the
UVA
Wizards.
had
They beat the
16 and a
Wizards.
half
Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah. So in that, you got Virginia and Martinsville. You touched on Martinsville's history. Go back to the days of Husky Hall when he was there, just winning title after title after title. They beat Radford in the regional semifinals. Martinsville's 17-9. They're not world beaters. Lost to Gretna in the regional final. The final score of that game was like 42-32. Okay. So imagine that kind of offensive firepower ending up against John Marshall. So this side of the bracket, for years, the folks at Radford and Floyd would just talk about, look, we're just trying to get to the title game because we know what's waiting for us. So we just tell our kids, look, you play as hard as you can, as long as you can, you get as far as you can. And I think this side of the bracket, that's what it's going to be. I think there's going to be a lot of rock fights, and I think the winner gets the opportunity to watch a bunch of D1 players.
Jollay, you're not done, man. Clark County is in Berryville, which is between Loudon and Winchester. And they get the unenviable task of playing.
It's just, and Rusty talked about it, putting the 6 champions in some kind of tournament. I get it. But how is John Marshall into Class 2? I mean, I get it. We're going by school size and all that, but okay, come on, man. I mean,
they've also got the easiest part of the draw. The top part with Virginia, Martinsville, Gretna, and Graham. Matt Hatfield, you can attest to this. That is much stronger than that bottom, and I think that's going to be key. Matt, what do you know about Bruton real quick? We want to give them a shout out.
Listen,
team.
Bruton's a pretty darn good team. They got a young man on their team, Brandon Freeman, a guard who's really impressive. Bruton, believe it or not, we talk about playing higher divisions like John Marshall could win the 5 or 6 championship. Well, Bruton, they beat a Class 6 school in Western Branch this year. Brandon Freeman, their junior guard's averaging 15.7 points per game. Kamani Phillips, the senior, averaging over 12 a game. And both Freeman and Phillips are assist players as well. They can get 4, 5, 6 assists a game, so they're playmakers, not just scorers. I like what they've done there, playing in that Bay Rivers, playing the likes of Grafton and Lafayette and New Kent, who have been pretty solid this year. I do want to give a shout out to Luray, 6-17 last year, and here they're in the state tournament. That's an awesome job there for them. If you guys haven't seen the game winner, by the way, from Teron Woolen, I think you might have saw it on social media, Kirk. That was unbelievable. Still inbounds and swinging it from half court. That was just insane. So, you're not going to get a better ending than that. I remember us seeing a few years ago the kid that passed away from Green Run, Ashley James, hitting that half court buzzer beater. But we've had 4 or 5 game winners this postseason. That one is the number 1 on the top 10 list to date. There might be one that trumps it in the semifinals or quarterfinals or championship, but it's going to have to be mighty good to beat that one. And then to finish up, John Marshall, 2 stats, guys. They've won by 61.3 points per game this postseason. And if you take the last 3 playoffs, which would be Damon Red Thompson, their point guard who's heading to James Madison, all the playoff games he's played in his career, he's won by an average of 54.4 points per game.
All right.
It's
crazy.
It's just so discouraging to the other teams when you've got that waiting on you. It's just, you've got to treat it as, look, the championship isn't going to matter. We got to get there. Mm-hmm. And hey, we won Class 2 without John Marshall.
There you go.
That's how you got to do it.
My question, guys, which begs my question without, and I know people get mad at me saying this, and maybe Rusty, Kirk, Chris, Justin, you guys can chime in on this. If you're one of those teams, what chance do you have unless you hold the ball? If not for the duration of the game, try to do it for stretches to slow the game down. With no shot clock, if your tactic isn't to try to hold the ball, and I actually had this conversation with some Southwest Virginia coaches before the season, if they got there, would they do it? And I got mixed results. Some said we might, some say nah. If we're lucky enough, that's a great problem to have or think about. But if you don't try to hold the ball, you're going to get run out of there. So you have to do something to give yourself a chance and shorten the game. You have to.
Yeah.
It's
Chris, I want to ask Chris.
You got to make it ugly.
Yeah. Chris, do you remember this was back when they used to have the Patriot District games at Lake Braddock? Did you see this game when TC Williams was playing Lake Braddock and Lake Braddock just held the ball? Did you see that? I was there. I didn't ref that game, but they just held it. And I think the first quarter went by and it might have been like 1 or 2 points. And in the second quarter, they didn't come out till the second. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. And then I believe this year, for a while, Lake Braddock was holding the ball for a quarter to just kind of shorten the game a little bit. They were like, we're not going to do this to you the whole game. You guys bought a ticket. But we're going to do it for the first quarter to shorten possessions to give us a better chance in that Patriot District. Yeah, that was something.
Yeah, that was crazy. Like, they just held the ball.
Well, and I think the other side of that is, say whoever you are and you're playing John Marshall, if you try to hold it, they're so talented, they'll just come running right at you. And if you're going to hold it, well, then one of those Division I kids or two of them will pin you, trap you, and then you're going to turn it over, and then here it goes. So I think even if you try to hold it now, I think maybe Marshall might sit there and let you do it for a little bit. But after a while, they're going to be like, okay, look, we've got 6 or 7 guys that are more talented, maybe more, than anybody you've got. We're just going to pound you from the minute you get the ball, and you can't hold it. So I think it's kind of, you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't.
It's a great point. And one more to finish up on that, Justin. I will say, as invincible as they look like, and I even said on the NFHS broadcast last year, they look like the Monstars from Space Jam if you're playing them. As invincible as they look, they were down guys in the regular season finale to a sub 500 J.R. Tucker team at the half. So they are beatable. But I just think whoever gets to that point where we expect, to see John Marshall win by, name the score, 40, 50, 60, if you're coaching that other team, you have to do something different. And I know fans hate that. Players hate that about holding the ball. But just try something. Because if you don't try, you just sit there, it's going to get ugly fast. So there's got to be some type of different tactic to at least make it interesting or see how they react to it.
Yeah, that's right.
Like I said, you got to throw it all out there, throw it all against the window, see what sticks, and at least you can say, hey, look, we threw everything at them, we tried, and they are who they are.
Yep. Chris, any feedback? Have you seen Luray or anybody? Any thoughts?
No, I want to get to Clark County next year. Didn't you guys mention? You mentioned Clark County. That's a team I want to cover next year. Because I've been hearing good things about them. John Marshall is just unbelievable. I mean, they're taking kids from Northern Virginia private schools up here, which is, think about that. A Class 2 team gets Aiden Argenbright from St. Stephen's to transfer down there. It's insane. But again, I mean, it's really a shame because I think Class 2 deserves a lot of credit. I've heard about some really good ball down your way, Justin, especially. So it's a shame, but they're still going to get the recognition they deserve, even in losing to John Marshall. So
I think what so keeping it real, I think. Oh, let me just do this. We all are going to pick John Marshall, right? Okay. So, but keeping it real before we go to Class 1, wrap this up for like everybody's kind of doing it to some degree. Okay. You guys don't have to nod your head or say you agree or disagree, but everybody's doing it. It's just that for John Marshall to do it, they're in Class 2. So it really widens the gap. Everybody's got somebody, but
we can all name schools that do it.
Yeah, and even like I always thought, well, it's a little harder.
Already talked about a few of them.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah. It's harder when you're in counties that it may be one high school for the whole county, but it still happens out there. But it's a little easier when you're in the metropolitan area and whatever. So anyway, all right, everybody, John Marshall.
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna be different. No, I'm not. Okay, all right, let's go. I just couldn't do it. All right, let's go on to Class 1 and let's see what we have there. Real quick, I know this, Chris. I mean, Justin, these squads. So we got Honecker against George Wythe. We've got Auburn and how do you pronounce that Chihowie?
Chilhowie.
Yeah, Chilhowie.
Chihowie, Lancaster, Brunswick, and then Carver College and Career Academy against Middlesex. We'll start with you again, Justin.
Yeah, Honaker and George Wythe. I've seen this George Wythe team play a couple times. I love watching. They can shoot threes. They've got good size. They're not tall, but their guards have good size. They take care of the ball. They play good defense. They can shoot you out of the gym. God help you if they get hot. I watched them play a really good Narrows team, and we're up by 25 at the half. So when they get hot, they're really good. Having said that, they lost to Auburn in the regional championship, and they lost to Auburn during the regular season. So I look at that Auburn-Chilhowie game. I watched Chilhowie up at the Chance Harmon Classic play Floyd in a game that scoring forgot. Floyd won this game by hitting 2 field goals in the second half, both in the last 90 seconds. It was, you wouldn't wish watching that on your biggest enemy. But Chilhowie has a 6'6" player, Will Goodwin. Now, he's skinny, but he can be a difference maker because how many people in Class 1 have a 6'6" kid? So he can be a difference maker if they use him. But I think Auburn, the fact they've beaten George Wythe twice, Auburn is one of those schools that is good in just about every sport. And they have these waves when they get, because you're a smaller school, you get these waves of kids coming through that play football, basketball, baseball, and all of a sudden they start playing for state titles. And I really like Auburn to get out of that side and play for the title.
Oh, all right.
Justin, what county are they in?
They are in Montgomery County.
Oh, are they really?
They're in Reiner. Yeah, they're right between Montgomery and Floyd.
I see where they are. I just didn't realize that was Montgomery County. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Matt, you have anything to add?
Yeah, and they've had some great battles, as Justin's talked about with George Wythe. I think every meeting has come down to like the last couple of possessions, including 4 overtimes yesterday in the region final with George Wythe. I actually started out the season and took some flack on our message boards on Virginia Preps, putting Wythe a spot ahead of Lancaster, who won last year's title and went undefeated. The main premise was George Wythe brought back the entire team, essentially, and Lancaster graduated some key seniors, so they did bring back the all-time leading scorer in school history and the state player of the year, and Troy Henderson, who can drop 30 at the blink of an eye. He's a dynamic scorer, and he might be the best player in this field, even with Chilhowie having the 6'6" post player and Goodwin with that game winner against Patrick Henry Glade Spring. I do want to shout out Carver Academy, Reggie Simon. A good coach there. He used to coach at Hopewell years ago. He's won over 100 games at Carver Academy. They're kind of new on the scene, and they beat J.R. Tucker this year, a larger classification school. Was really surprised and impressed. They beat both Franklin and Brunswick to get to this stage. I think Lancaster's got the easier draw to get to the final. I would not be surprised if we see, chapter 4 or 5 of Auburn and Wythe now in the semifinals, and I think it goes on the last shot. And it would be heartbreaking if Auburn, who's won 3 or 4 of those meetings already, lost to Wythe in a rematch. But I'm going to take the rare shot in the dark, although I have tons of respect for what Terry Millirons has done at Auburn, and his son Ethan, by the way. Nick, both of them played for him. Nick on the team. I have a ton of respect for what they've done there. I'm going to give maybe Wythe the edge this time in the rematch. And it's hard to go against Lancaster, but I do wonder if they have enough scoring outside of Henderson. If someone puts a box and one on him or doubles him, who's that next scorer? So it wouldn't surprise me if the Auburn with the winner, if they were to meet again in the semis, got there. But I also think Honaker's not getting maybe enough love statewide. People know how good they are. They have some athletes from that football team that had a heck of a year. So Class 1 to me is pretty interesting.
Yeah. I was just going to point out, like I said about Roanoke and hoops, a lot of times we overlook these schools, and there's some great athletes. Honaker's had Heath Miller. George Wythe has always had a great program. And I said this to somebody. It's some people I know personally that are buying a place down in Kilmarnock on the water. That King George County and all that, you're going into that Westmoreland and that Lancaster and all that. Those schools are going to be moving up, and there's going to be a lot of athletes down there. And there's Lancaster's, they're defending champions, right, Matt?
Yeah, they were undefeated last year, wire to wire.
Yeah. So this is a great division, and hoops is different than football. The number of bodies can be different. I know Gate City is too, but that's a place where they pack it in. Mac McClung was down there. Great athletes, great football players from Gate City. And there's just a lot of great sports down there played. And then classically, over the years, they've had some good ones. But Matt, who'd you pick for one?
I'll go back to my preseason call of with over Lancaster, just so I can get bombarded by our message board posters and readers can tell me how wrong I am if it doesn't happen. So there you go.
Okay.
I'll stick to my original pick.
I like Lancaster. See, I'm from Virginia. I can say Lancaster. If you guys know anybody from PA, they have this strange way of saying Lancaster. You have to say it that
Jollay,
way.
have you any info or feedback or thoughts on this?
Man, I got nothing. We don't have many Class 1 schools up here, unfortunately. In fact, we have less than 0. But George Wythe is a Class 1 school. Did I get that right?
Yeah, but there's more than one George Wythe, right?
Yeah, there's one in Richmond, right? Yeah.
Oh, okay. That was what was confusing me. Okay, I'm sorry. So
That's
as
the
you can
wisdom
see,
with
I
it.
have nothing to contribute to this conversation.
Okay. All
It's
right.
the only one now because you got Clark County, Berryville, and 2. So there we go.
All right. Well, for me, I know this is going to be tough because Brunswick is playing Lancaster first, but Brian Stiff might walk through that door. I don't know. So I'm going Brunswick with the upset, and they're going to take out Auburn in the finals.
Okay.
All right. So look, guys, this has been a lot of fun. I do want now, if we were to throw them all up, and we've got great teams at all levels, and we don't have to say but who do you think would you say if you could make your final 2, and this is any class, who do you have playing? Oh, let's do Final Four.
Who plays John Marshall?
Yeah. So you can.
Okay.
But is John Marshall? This isn't John Marshall from last year. Okay. This John Marshall. Now they still very, very, very talented. But is there anybody that could beat them? I know a lot of people were saying all year, 757 saying Woodside. They thought Woodside and Marshall would be a good game. And I think they scrimmaged.
I'll tell you this, guys. They did lose to a private school in their area in St. Christopher's this year.
They lost to St. Christopher.
And 2 years ago, that Hayfield team, as Chris knows, that was dominant, was better than them. They beat them by
Yeah,
double
they beat
figures.
Chris used to shoot the rock.
I'll give you a team, guys, that we probably, because I know we all didn't pick them to win 4, but if they're hitting threes, I watched them bang out a lot of threes against Green Run. If Varina's hitting shots, Varina would not be intimidated by John Marshall, and they'd have a shot. But they would need to hit probably 8 to 12 threes to win the game. So if you want to take maybe a surprise of the champions who would stand the best chance of beating John Marshall, I might go on a limb and say a team from their own area, Varina, might be able to do it. They've won back-to-back state titles, and there's a familiarity factor that those kids aren't afraid of those kids.
East Richmond kids aren't afraid of anybody.
That's it. But I've seen St. Christopher's. They came up here for Sleepy Thompson, and they are good with Brandon Jennings and all that. But if John Marshall is losing to St. Christopher's, there are at least a half dozen teams that wouldn't be. Let's start with Patriot. I'll start with Patriot right now. O'Connell beat a team up here, Grace Christian, by 1 point, right, out of Maryland. Patriot lost to that team by 1 point. So, if O'Connell's, a stronger, way stronger team than St. Christopher's, in my mind, I think there are several teams that could go with John Marshall. Now, you go with John Marshall to be safe as that one team if you have a big 32-team tournament. But, I'll go a little Class 6, and as you mentioned, Varina and Woodside, a lot of those beach teams, I think, could hang with John Marshall.
Well, I'll go back just 2 years ago. John Marshall won a state championship, but Hayfield beat them.
Yeah.
That year they were undefeated. They beat a lot of private schools, and they beat John Marshall. So last year they were very special.
It's the right team on the right night. Any given night. It's the right team on the right night.
Yeah.
But not down in 2. I mean, you're talking about David Goliath thing down in 2. So, which could happen. You have to maybe run the 4 corners, but
I think it would. If I had to say, I would say the top. If I had a 4, I would go Patriot, Marshall, Lake Taylor, and Woodside. And I got Woodside coming out of that. They already beat two of those teams. I mean, they beat Patriot.
Rusty, you should check out South Lakes Potomac. South Lakes is very impressive. Very impressive.
Okay.
Really good. Tenacious guards. Jordan Scott is underrated. Remember, I told you I thought he was a little overrated. He's very good.
But so we didn't talk players and we didn't talk coaches. I do want to get the last thought from Matt. So there's one thing that can make a difference. So I didn't say South Lakes would be in my Final Four, but is there a player? And we know Scott is a great player, but I don't know if he's the type that is going to just take over a game. Is there one player that could pull a Danny Manning and it didn't matter who's in the way, they would take over and lead their team to a championship? Is there one player?
There probably is on some of the higher profile teams we've talked about that will win the championship, like a Weish at Varina, maybe a Tay Barber at Patriot. There's a number of those guys, but I'm trying to think here on the Henderson at Lancaster or Lancaster, however you pronounce it, for sure. John Marshall's got a few of them. Just trying to think here off the top of my head. If there's a guy that wills his team, maybe in Class 3 and they were undefeated, it wouldn't surprise me if Cam Pacheco stepped it up and had a couple 30-point games and gave them a chance and could put them over the top. If there's one guy that I'm looking at maybe that could be a difference maker in a bracket, I'm trying to think Class 5. Is there a guy that's that probably not Class 4? I mean, if he got hot, Jaden Johnson, Tuscarora could have a 40-point game. You never know. So there's a couple of those players that could leap to mind in that realm, but most of them are probably on your favorites to win the championship, which also helps that they have those go-to guys that could be the difference maker in a late game situation.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun and very informative. A lot of people will want to see this because we covered the whole state. We covered all the boys. And again, with basketball, any of these teams could debatably be the best team in the state, So I want to thank you guys. So thanks, Chris, Justin, Matt, and my co-host, Kirk here. This has been the Kirk and Bird Show covering VHSL boys basketball. We are out.